Good morning, I'm Mel. I just wanted to talk about a common theme that arrives in my therapy room and make a little bit more sense of it. And that's the finding our voice. There are so many layers to why we can't find our voice. And I'd like to also add a little bit of neuroscience in, if I may. This may not be the shortest video, but I'm hoping it's going to be useful, so bear with me. So there's often lots of reasons we can't find our voice, and sometimes we're just not raised to. So in family homes, the power lies with parents, and children are often told what to do, when to get up, when to go to school. And so they don't necessarily have a lot of autonomy. And so children that grow up in homes where there's perhaps there's a lot of fear or a lot of shame learn to stay quiet, to stay safe. And so that staying quiet to stay safe is kind of inbuilt in us, and these are patterns that we often develop in childhood. I often use myself as an example because that doesn't get me into any trouble. And so what happens in the body and the brain is when we feel like saying something and it feels like it's going to bring us perhaps into conflict, it's scary. And so what happens in my body is my heart rate goes up, I have that anxious feeling, and almost my survival mechanism is kicking in. What happens in my brain is the Broca region, the speech region, shuts down. So I can't actually access so well my prefrontal cortex. This also happens when we have social anxiety, that kind of bunny in the headlights. I can't think, I don't know what to say. So finding our voice can happen in different contexts. It could be in a relationship, or it could be with new people. And so learning to be able to manage our bodies, to bring our heart rate down, to regulate our nervous system, and be able to calm things down enough to be able to then access our prefrontal cortex and allow our Broca, I think it's Broca, I always get this, I always want to call it Broca region, to be able to work. So we can go into what we call speechless terror. It might sound quite dramatic, but actually that's kind of what's happening in our bodies. If you can't find your voice, then it leaves you vulnerable. You can't set boundaries, you can't get your needs met. And so it kind of stacks up a whole host of complications. And I really want to say, if this resonates with you, it really isn't your fault. Children aren't given autonomy a lot of the time. They're often shouted at, they're often punished, they're often left feeling ashamed. So it doesn't feel comfortable to meet your own needs and to say no, or that doesn't fit for me. So it may take some work in order to be able to say no, to really go there relationally and have this risk that if I say no, the sky won't fall in, these people won't reject me. We're often taught through lack of acceptance to people please. I call it the dis-ease to please. And so it's all kind of really interconnected, that relationship with yourself and being able to feel confident enough to voice what you need to say. I'd like to reframe it too, because we often think we're being a nuisance or a pain, but we're actually not. Actually voicing what you need helps to preserve relationships. Putting up and shutting up and editing for a quiet life, well, there is a place for that. But if that's your constant pattern, what happens in relationships is you shove down the resentment, you get further and further apart, and then it's kind of a bit of a shock when somebody says, well, I'm not happy and I'm leaving. They've never been able to perhaps voice, or maybe they voice and the other person hasn't been able to hear, because it depends on how you voice as well. So if your communication isn't kind and respectful, and it's kind of you never, then you get into attacky patterns. So the words we use are really important, but actually being able to speak them can be really, really tough for some people. The anxiety shuts us down to keep us quiet. So overriding these patterns born out of childhood can take time. One of the things I used to do that really helped was when I was really angry, I would cry because of the way I was wired up. But what I knew that I needed to communicate because it was kind of all inside but wouldn't come out. Sulking is often something that we see. And sulking is really, I'm angry, but I don't have a channel for it. I don't have a voice for it. And so it's stuck inside. So we may use our body to let you know we're cross, bang a door, slam a door, but we can't voice it. And that's maybe because our system is shutting us down, systems, I should say, because there's plenty of them in our bodies. But it also may be because we don't have a language for it. We kind of know something's not right, but we may not always have a language for it. The term for that is alexithymia. Yeah, it's a very long and nice word, alexithymia. And so sometimes people don't have a language for it. Sometimes they can't speak it. When I'm working with a little person and she goes silent when new people talk to her, people think she's angry or she's being rude, but she actually goes into a place of speechless terror. And it takes a real a real good noticing to know that that's not purposeful, and that some work is required for her to be able to have a language for her experience and be able to speak it. She may be able to draw it. This is where technology can be really useful. She can text me. And so actually we can be a little bit braver if we're using tech, or if we're using a pen and paper. I've written many a rage on a page because I didn't feel safe enough to be able to communicate. And it's really hard for the person on the other end of that who wants you to talk up. So sometimes it's not won't, it's can't. And sometimes, even though you might be the kindest and most compassionate person, it's not about you. It's about what they've lived through. And so bodies don't update so quickly in terms of how we kind of operate and how we're wired up. So it can take work. We may have to practice these words. We may have to have really get comfortable with how it feels in our body. We have to work through some of the limiting beliefs that people won't like us. And if we say no, there may be repercussions on the other side. We may get people who kick off. Some people will accept it, some people might kick off, some people may try and project stuff onto you. So it takes quite a lot of confidence to be able to stand in your kind of space, not puff up, not shrink down, and stay firm in what you're kind of talking about, asking for. So yeah, finding your voice is quite complex. We kind of shovel at people, speak up, speak up, speak up. But actually, I think it's a far more complicated process when you kind of understand. A lot of us are wired for survival and protection, and so that's kind of counterproductive for a thriver, or for thriving, which requires us to be able to speak up, find our voice, set boundaries, and ask for what we need. We can feel guilty about that, but that's also a learned habit that we can. A lot of this stuff is really being able to get uncomfortable again, and actually you may feel vulnerable again. And if you felt vulnerable in your early history, we kind of tend to try and protect ourselves from feeling that again. But it's counterproductive. Safety is our best friend, but it's also our worst enemy. So I love helping people to find their voice. Sometimes we use creative methods to do that, because without that voice, without being able to set boundaries, and without being able to show up and have an opinion and have your say, what happens is you're really stuck. Yeah. And so that stuckness can be paralyzing, and it can leave us living half lives. I'm gonna finish there because I can hear my cleaner cleaning in the background too, which is kind of funny. So yeah, I'm Mel Riley. I'm an adult child and family therapist, and I'm passionate about relationships. I'm passionate about recovery and helping people live their best lives, and really understanding that stuckness isn't our fault, but we can absolutely, with work, with patience, with understanding, recover from the early childhood stuff, and those patterns that feel quite entrenched at times. Have a lovely day, everyone. Bye.